Disney is reportedly in full-blown panic mode, and Rachel Zegler could be at the heart of the chaos. With their Snow White remake facing intense backlash, CEO Bob Iger and other executives are scrambling to manage what could become a disastrous flop. So what went wrong? From rewriting the iconic classic to fit a modern agenda to Zegler's polarizing comments that have divided fans, the situation has spiraled out of control. Could Disney be on the brink of another billion-dollar flop? And why has Zegler's career seemed to stall since this storm began? Stick around as we unravel the full story behind this Hollywood disaster. Disney's leadership, spearheaded by CEO Bob Iger, is reportedly in crisis mode, dealing with a decision they now regret. The root of the issue? Their attempt to modernize Snow White, a bold move that's quickly backfired. First, they tried reimagining the beloved classic to fit a more progressive narrative, aligning with their DEI initiatives. Then there's the casting of Rachel Zegler as Snow White, a decision that's left fans divided and executives in a tough spot. As the film's release date looms, Disney is cornered. Marketing has already kicked off, and making any significant changes at this point is all but impossible. But let's be real, some are wondering if it's time for Disney to hit the brakes entirely, shelving Snow White and reconsidering its creative direction. The controversy hasn't exactly been subtle. Rachel Zegler, the movie's lead, has been vocal about the changes in this version of the story. She's framed Snow White as a feminist girl boss who doesn't need saving by Prince Charming, a stark departure from the original tale. This leads to a bigger problem for Disney. In their effort to modernize Snow White, they've stripped away the elements that made the story iconic. Think back to the original animated masterpiece. Snow White was a sweet, gentle 13-year-old girl whose charm and kindness complemented the rugged, sometimes chaotic personalities of the seven dwarfs. And the prince, while a bit impulsive, his love for Snow White and the iconic kiss that saved her were central to the story's emotional heart. Yet Zegler herself has hinted that the prince might be scrapped entirely from this version. Her reasoning? She reportedly referred to him as a stalker, suggesting the narrative no longer has room for him. Even the trailer, recently shown to audiences, is adding to the debate. While some fans are curious, others can't help but notice the reliance on heavy CGI, giving the so-called live-action film an almost artificial feel. Is this really live action or just an animated movie in disguise? The dwarves, those beloved, quirky companions from the original story, have been radically transformed, though not in a positive way. Once known for their distinct personalities and human charm, they've been replaced by CGI characters that fail to deliver the same magic. What used to be a quirky, lovable ensemble now feels lifeless and hollow, as if the heart of the story has been stripped away. This shift to CGI presents another challenge. How can actors deliver authentic performances when they're forced to interact with tennis balls and green screens? We've seen similar struggles in recent projects like The Little Mermaid, where Halle Bailey had to interact with animatronic sea creatures or pretend to talk to animated fish. The result? A noticeable lack of connection and chemistry that even the best actors can't always overcome. For Rachel Zegler's Snow White, this issue could be even more pronounced. Acting opposite CGI dwarves and digitally created environments might leave her performance feeling isolated, with moments that lack the depth and emotion audiences expect from live-action films. Instead of immersing viewers in the story, the CGI risks pulling them out of it entirely. But the technical hurdles aren't the only problem. Rachel Zegler's public persona and controversial comments have added fuel to the fire. What should have been an opportunity to reinvent Snow White has instead become a PR nightmare for Disney. Zegler's outspoken political views, including polarizing remarks about Trump supporters, alienated a significant portion of the audience. Statements like they should never know peace didn't exactly align with the wholesome image Disney usually projects. While Zegler did issue an apology, it felt more like damage control than a sincere expression of regret. For many, her comments left a lasting impression that was hard to overlook. The fallout hasn't been limited to Snow White. Zegler's reputation appears to have taken a serious hit, with her career seemingly stuck in neutral. Despite her previous success, she hasn't landed any major roles in the last 2 years. Insiders speculate that her polarizing comments, combined with the backlash surrounding Snow White, have made her a risky choice for big-budget productions. In fact, casting Zegler now feels like slapping a warning label on a project. Proceed with caution. This could be a disaster for Disney and Zegler. The stakes couldn't be higher, but the road ahead looks anything but smooth. If Disney aimed to modernize Snow White, their execution seems to have strayed far from the story's essence. What once struck a delicate balance between timeless fairy tale wonder and meaningful life lessons has now morphed into something divisive. The new Snow White, portrayed as a symbol of modern, unapologetic feminism, may resonate with some, but it alienates a large portion of audiences who cherish the simplicity and charm of the original. In its effort to empower the character, Disney risks stripping away the universal appeal that made the story so beloved. The gentle innocence of the original Snow White, her ability to see the good in people and forge bonds even in the harshest conditions, has been replaced with a one-dimensional, strong, independent woman archetype. While empowerment is a worthy goal, the execution here feels forced and out of sync with the heart of the story. Fans are beginning to feel that Disney's approach is less about crafting meaningful stories and more about layering classic tales with modern ideologies. This trend of pushing woke narratives where representation and progressive messaging often take precedence over storytelling has left many feeling disconnected. The charm, depth, and relatability of these characters have been overshadowed by what feels like an agenda, leaving audiences questioning whether Disney still understands what makes their stories timeless. The trailer for Snow White only deepens these concerns. It offers glimpses of lush visuals but fails to reassure fans with a coherent or compelling narrative. Without a clear sense of direction, viewers are left skeptical. Add Rachel Zegler's polarizing public persona into the mix, and the challenge for Disney becomes even steeper. Many audiences are exhausted by the endless stream of live-action remakes, which often fail to recapture the magic of their animated counterparts. Instead of enhancing the classics, they feel like diluted imitations wrapped in modern packaging. This isn't just about Snow White, though it's emblematic of a larger pattern within Disney. The studio repeatedly reimagines cherished tales, stripping away the core elements that made them resonate across generations. They inject them with contemporary themes and ideologies which, while well-intentioned, often feel like surface-level inclusions rather than deeply integrated messages. As a result, these films risk becoming disjointed, neither honoring the original nor presenting a truly innovative take. Take the original Snow White, for example. It wasn't merely a light-hearted fairy tale, it was a deeply symbolic story about growth and resilience. Scholars like Jonathan Pugh have highlighted how the narrative represents a young woman's journey of self-discovery and her ability to navigate life's challenges. The dwarves, with their rough-and-tumble ways, served as imperfect companions who reflected flawed masculinity, while the prince symbolized hope, love, and the reward of patience and faith. Now, in Disney's reimagining, these layers of symbolism have been brushed aside in favor of a modern lens. The dwarves have been replaced with CGI caricatures, and the prince who played a pivotal role in the original is being written out entirely, labeled a stalker by Zegler in her controversial interviews. Without these elements, the story loses its depth and becomes more about checking modern narrative boxes than exploring timeless human experiences. Disney seems to have forgotten that Snow White wasn't just a story about empowerment, it was a tale about vulnerability, kindness, and the complexities of human relationships. It was a story that taught lessons subtly, allowing audiences to find meaning on their own terms. By replacing these nuances with heavy-handed messaging, the studio risks alienating both lifelong fans and new viewers alike. Where does this leave Snow White? In a precarious spot. Disney is gambling on an audience that embraces this modernized version, but the backlash suggests they may have overestimated the appetite for such a dramatic overhaul. The question now is whether this approach will pay off or whether it will serve as yet another reminder that tampering with beloved classics can often do more harm than good. He's not just a love interest, he's the benchmark for what a worthy partner should be. The prince embodies hope, growth, and the promise of something greater, a love that is earned, not given. What this remake seems to overlook is that the original Snow White wasn't problematic because a prince saves a princess. It's the depth of the characters and the lessons about striving for what you truly deserve that matter. The original Snow White carried a subtle yet profound message: never settle. It wasn't about dependence, it was about finding someone who truly matches your worth. By contrast, today's feminist interpretation trades in that nuance for a loud, overly simplified archetype of empowerment. Snow White doesn't need to be a warrior wielding a sword. Her true strength lies in her compassion, her courage in adversity, and her ability to inspire others through grace. Unfortunately, this new take feels forced. Instead of building on Snow White's inherent strengths, the remake reduces her to a caricature of modern empowerment. It's not just the story that suffers, it's the very magic of filmmaking itself. Walt Disney's original Snow White was a labor of love, a groundbreaking feat that pushed the boundaries of what animation could do. Created on a modest budget of $1.5 million in its time, the film became a masterpiece that defined an era. Every frame was crafted with care, and every scene served a purpose. In comparison, this live-action adaptation, with its massive budget and excessive runtime, feels bloated with filler and hollow in its execution. Instead of being a heartfelt reimagining, the remake feels like a glossy product driven by political agendas. The dwarves, once unique and full of personality, have been reduced to generic CGI characters, robbing the film of its humor and warmth. The result is a movie that looks expensive but feels lifeless, devoid of the spark and humanity that made the original timeless. Disney's gamble with this revamped Snow White aims to capture a modern audience, but in doing so, it risks alienating the core fans who adored the original for its heart, charm, and authenticity. The question remains, can this remake ever capture the magic of the original? Judging by what we've seen so far, the answer seems to be no. What do you think? Has Disney lost its way, or is this just the evolution of storytelling? Will Snow White's controversial remake flop, or will audiences surprise us all? Let us know in the comments below.